Mr. Washington, can you quickly tell me what airspace requires an ADS-B transponder?
Not sure I can answer that question right now.
So what are the 6 types of special use airspace that protect this national security that appear on FAA charts?
Sorry, Senator, I cannot answer that question.
Okay, so what are the operational limitations of a pilot flying under basic med?
Senator, I'm not a pilot, so...
So can you tell me what causes an aircraft to spin or to stall?
Again, Senator, I'm not a pilot.
That gentleman was trying to be the head of the FAA. The FAA seems to be a fairly important institution, doesn't it? After all, those planes in the sky, we don't want them dropping out of the sky, do we? So what kind of hiring are they doing over there? Joining me now, William Trackman, General Counsel at Mountain States Legal. William, could you please enlighten us? What exactly are the qualifications they're using at the FAA, being as how that's such an important job with life and death and all that?
Well, the FAA clearly isn't sending their best, obviously. Here we have a situation where even at the highest level of the FAA, this is someone who is nominated to take charge. My firm, Mountain States Legal Foundation, has a lawsuit related to air traffic controllers, which is a separate hiring process, obviously. And in that process, they had a pre-employment test, and they looked at the results of the pre-employment test and decided that too many white people passed the test. And so they would flush that test and adopt a new one that would gerrymander the racial pool and create, a more favorable racial balance for the White House. And in our case, we represent over 900 would-be air traffic controllers who lost their schooling opportunities, they lost their career opportunities because they couldn't pass the new test, over 900 of them. Some of them passed with 100% in the initial go-round, and then they couldn't pass the new test that was adopted by the FAA. So we are suing over race discrimination, and we're looking forward to prevailing and making it so that this can't happen again.
I'm looking forward to you prevailing as well. Exactly how long has this kind of insanity gone on, at least to your discovery so far, in the airline industry? Is this something that happened started 6 months ago? Has it been years in the making?
It's been going on a while, probably a decade at this point. Under the Obama administration, these were the sorts of initiatives they were adopting in order to get at quote-unquote diversity within the air traffic controller hiring pool. But just in the last year or two, I think we've all seen this DEI effort ramp up. We've seen airlines announce that they're going to make sure that 50% of pilots are women. We've seen videos online of all non-white staff on airplanes saying, look how diverse we are. And then, of course, we've just got a number of incidents lately that involve disasters on airplanes like the Alaska Airlines flight that indicate that merit is not at the top of the list, and that instead people are obsessed with race, they're obsessed with gender, things that ought not matter. I certainly couldn't care less about the race or gender of the pilot in the cockpit or the air traffic controller on the ground when I go from point A to point B. But that really is something that people in the White House obsess about. They constantly think, how are we going to make this pool of employees better reflect the exact racial demographics of the country when that qualification has nothing to do with your skill, merit, competence, experience. And so it's actually creating a situation where we're courting danger. I certainly still fly, but I'm worried in the long run that this will actually result in a disaster and a tragedy.
Abby, I need to ask you a question because I'm not a woman and you very much are one. I believe that God makes us with certain instincts. I just believe we're created that way. As a man, I have instincts to protect certain things. As a woman, maybe I'm just blessed to have a great mother, and I did. My wife, I watch what she does for our sons. Like, she'll kill herself just to make sure they have a good birthday party or something like that. There's nothing she wouldn't do with them. I think about women and their babies as women will lay down and die for their babies. In nature, it's like this. Grizzly bears will die. They do all the time, protecting their young. Yet, what happened to American women or women of the West? And I'm not absolving men, I'm really not, but how is that not just something built in? Whatever the actress tells you or the latest Democrat politician, how is that? I always thought it was built in. Clearly, I was wrong.
I think it comes down to a culture of irresponsibility. When you, as a mother, yes, there is absolutely an inherent, innate connection to your child. But even for a lot of women I know who have had children and, have children here, it's hard for them to to understand how important that role is, right? Because I've talked to so many women. I'm a stay-at-home mom with my 2 sons, and I will tell people, I love being home with them. I'm considering homeschooling, and they're like, "Oh, I can't imagine being home with my kids all day. I could never. I could never do that." And so, of course, they still absolutely adore their kids, but there's this element of like, we've really divorced women from motherhood. We've made women afraid of being mothers, of being completely responsible for their children. And so they kind of eschew that responsibility for everything we've been raised to do instead, fulfill our potential by going out and getting a job or going out and pursuing our dreams, when being a mother is the best thing you can do. And it fulfills every dream and fulfills every potential of women. And unfortunately, we've really come into an era, a time where women are not taught that. They're taught that being a mother only holds you back. And even if you are a mother, this is a phrase I've heard a lot lately, which is, "Oh, you can be a mother and pursue your dreams." That's even used on the pro-life side. And I like it as an idea, but the truth is, a lot of the time, being a mother can preclude following your dreams, because your child is more important than whatever you've been told is your dream, and your child becomes your dream. And that is a beautiful concept that we really have lost.
Yeah, it's something that you see all the time out there. You don't have to choose. No, actually, you do have to choose. Oftentimes, you very much do have to choose. Okay, that's women. Let's talk about men. Men have a very important role in this discussion. They should not remove themselves in this discussion. They should not bow before these dirty, commie, baby-hating women. When it comes to this discussion, men have an important role to protect these children. Young men today, young men I talk to all the time, they email my show, they don't want to be dads, Abby. Now, I talk all the time about how great it is to be a dad, even though I suck at it. I love it. Why don't young men want to be dads?
I think they're afraid of women. I think they're afraid that women are going to tell them they're doing it wrong. We are, the culture we live in is very pro-female, even though you're going to hear the antithesis of that on the left. And so women are often put in a position of being like, "Oh, you're doing it wrong. Oh, you're not a good enough father. Oh, you're not doing things right." And that's not true. Men are different than women, as it should be. Fathers are incredibly important to their children for the opposite reasons that women are, right? Women are there to nurture and take care of their children, and fathers are there to put risk into their lives and play with them and make it like a little dangerous so that their kids know they can take risks and still live. And a lot of women don't want to see that. So they're telling their husbands, "You're doing it wrong. You're doing everything wrong." And so men look at, their dads who maybe are not able to interact with their children in that masculine way. And maybe they're seeing, "Oh, this doesn't look like a lot of fun. It looks like I would have to be feminized as a father, and that doesn't look fun." Whereas with my husband, fatherhood is so much fun for him, because I'm like, "Yeah, like throw our kid on the floor. That's hilarious." Like, he loves it. He loves being thrown in the air. He loves scraping his knee. He loves not being completely in a bubble and protected all the time. But that's what fathers can bring. I think that's an element. I also think that a lot of guys, they don't know that parenthood is fun. We've been shown, right, that, again, this is on women, for women and men. We've been shown this picture that parenthood is the end of your fun, that you don't get to do things on your own schedule anymore. You don't get to have nights out, and you don't get to, it feels like an end rather than a beginning, right? Having children is so much the beginning of your life, not the end at all. And I recently heard something that I thought was just so moving, is that a lot of the times, even now, for men who do have children, for women who do have children, we think of it as a stage of life. We think of it as, "Oh, you have your young kids, so maybe you only have 2, so that this stage of life is short. And then you can get back into your normal life of being able to go out and party whenever you want." Of course, it's going to be a little different with kids as you get older, but it's more on your own schedule, rather than a way of life. That having children is a way of life. And that's why there are some people out there who I totally respect, and I hope to be among them, who just continuously have children, because they think of it as a way of life, not a stage of life. And it's not like, "Oh, I just need to get through this so that I can get back to my normalcy."
Republicans do nothing. Republicans have been in charge for I don't know how long of managing the decline. I mean, look, it's not exactly a new insult to call the Republican Party controlled opposition, but let's be frank, that's exactly what they are. Even Joseph Stalin allowed an opposition party. A lot of people don't realize this. He allowed, encouraged, and in fact funded an opposition party to give the people of the Soviet Union an illusion of choice. Oh, no, these guys are against me. Wow, it's pretty scary, but somehow they never end up accomplishing any of their anti-Stalin goals. We're constantly told the Republican Party is going to fight for us and protect the border, and we'll cut your taxes, and we'll be pro-life, and we'll protect the family. Yet none of these things ever seem to materialize. They all talk about it during election season. I'll build the wall. And then you get there and you get 25 feet of wall and a bunch of excuses. Greg Abbott, look, that's his excuse. He's a Republican. That's what they all are. That's why I'm an anti-communist.
Apparently that clip fired up the senator. One of the good ones. We don't have very many good ones, sadly, but we do have one out of Alabama football. Coach, everyone knows him as Coach, not Senator. I think that's the coolest thing in the world, Senator Tommy Tuberville. Coach, I don't know why that clip got you all fired up. What did I do? Are you mad at me?
Well, unfortunately, you told a lot of truth, Jesse. There's a lot of truth in the entire. I watched the entire clip, and we're in bad trouble. And I tell people that when I go out and speak in Alabama. People ask me, Coach, what are we going to do? How are we going to do it? Where are we at? And I pretty much tell them, hey, our country's in bad trouble. We've probably already lost our country as we grew up in it. Now, the only chance we can get it back is to get people up here that's going to listen to their constituents. And as you just said, a lot of people come up here, Jesse, and the Democrats, for instance, they're in a group mode. They vote as a group. They figure something out, and that's the way they go, and they're going to stick with it, hell or high water. Republicans, we're kind of individual contractors. I represent Alabama. I don't represent me. I come up here and I vote for the state of Alabama because we're pro-life, we're pro-military, we're against big government, we're for God. All those things go along, and anything with that, I'm going to vote that way. I'm not going to hem-haw around and let some other Republican come to me and say, Coach, we need you to vote this way or that way, or any lobbyist. And, my dad was in the military. He died on active duty. I believe in this country, but I'll tell you, we are not a team in the Republican side. We try to be, but there's too many individual contractors. And again, I vote different than a lot of them sometimes, and they probably think the same thing about me. But again, the thing about it is they don't do that on the Democratic side. They stick together and they're going to vote, for their persuasion, not their state. They're going to vote how Chuck Schumer wants them to vote, and that's how we've ended up in this mess.
Coach, why is it that way on the right to such an extent? And this is what I mean. I don't expect or even want you to be identical to Mike Lee or Ted Cruz or something like that. I like that we have individuals up there who are different and have different perspective on things. But some of these guys who are up there, and I'm happy to name names, as you know, but I don't need to, some of these guys actually seem to hate me as a GOP primary voter, as part of the GOP base, the things I care about. They talk down to us now quite openly all the time that we're stupid and we're idiots and we don't understand. It feels like they hate us.
Well, I think a lot of times, and again, I'm not going to put words in other senators' mouths, but the thing about it is you're around so much up here that sometimes you get into a situation where you think you know better than everybody else, other than say, it doesn't make any difference how I think here as Coach Tommy Tuberville. I vote for the people of Alabama. I'm not going to vote to spend money up here that we don't have. I'm just not going to do it. And they don't want me to do that. And again, I'll fight back against, the abortion policies that the Biden administration has thrown at us, the military and the VA. I'll fight back against anything that I think the Alabama people from Alabama want me to fight back against. And I don't care. I'm not running to get reelected. Okay. I could care less about staying up here, 15, 20, 30 years. I've had my career. I'm up here to help Alabama and help the citizens of this country. And I'm going to vote that way.
Is that why you're more impervious to it, and maybe why some of the others are not? And I really genuinely mean that. Everyone knew who Tommy Tuberville was long before you became a United States Senator. You've had this incredible life and this great career and everything. You don't need to be a freaking senator. You can walk away tomorrow and be just fine. You're still going to be Coach Tommy Tuberville. So the others who don't necessarily have that life experience, and not many do, is that what hurts them? All they have is, I'm Senator this, I'm Congressman that, and if they lose that, they're nothing? Is that what happens to our guys up there?
Well, I think it happens to groups on both sides, not just our side. I think people come up here and they see this as something that they can use as what you said, as a symbol of a power of, I made it to this point. There's only 100 U.S. senators. I don't look at it that way. I think you got to come in with that mindset. Again, I didn't invent the wheel here. I just come up here and I've seen what's going on. And I have not voted for one dime to go to Ukraine. I do not believe. And again, there's nobody that's got any more information than me because I'm on armed services. I've been in all the classified hearings. I've asked questions to all the generals. People have been there. I've had people here, hostages from Ukraine and people that's been fighting there. I've talked to all of them. And I see where Mike Johnson's changed his mind. Said, I've seen things now that changed my mind. We need to give money to Ukraine. Yes, they can't win. I don't know how to put it any more plain. They cannot win over Russia. We need to go over there and get this madness over with and save the lives of people from Ukraine and Russia and draw a line, a new boundary. They keep saying that Vladimir Putin is going to run through Europe. He doesn't want Europe. What the hell would he want that for? I mean, they have no minerals, they have no gas or oil, they don't have anything. And sure, he could probably go through there because they have boutique armies now. They don't spend any money on defense. But at the end of the day, this guy does not want people on his borders, with weapons like us in Ukraine. NATO wants Ukraine to be on their team. I don't believe they need to be on their team. We wouldn't want China and Mexico. At the end of the day, that's what it's all about. They can't win.
Well, speaking of borders, this Mayorkas situation is not surprising to anyone who understands how these dirty communists operate. I knew Chuck Schumer wasn't going to have a trial. That's something Republicans would do to themselves. Democrats would never do such a thing. So we're just stuck with an open border now, aren't we, Senator? I know you don't want that. I know that's not what I want, but that's really what we're stuck with now, right?
Most devastating thing that's happened, Jesse, and you're in my lifetime. And it's over. What you said, that they're here, they're not going home. We might be able to send a few of them home, but they've let their prisons out down in Venezuela. They've done everything they possibly can do to ruin our country. I just don't understand. I've asked some of my Democratic colleagues, what is it that you don't understand about our country is getting overrun by people that don't know anything about our country? They can't help our country whatsoever, and it's going to cost us a fortune, and it's going to cause crime to go out the roof. What is it you don't understand? We need to help other people. Wait a minute. We're all for immigration. We can bring 1 million people in a year. We can bring in people that speak our language, are educated, that can help us become a better country. But that's not what they want. They want voters. At the end of the day, that's what this is all about. You know that. But I'll tell you, it is going to be devastating to this next few generations coming up. And heaven help us if we don't get something done at the border. That's the reason I'm really disgusted with the Republican Party. We have had an opportunity to say, listen, we're going to take our football and go home. And we're not going to pass anything for the rest of this term. I don't care who it's for, whether it's a new budget, we're going to go home until you close that damn border because it is killing the American people. And, but we won't do it. I mean, we've had every opportunity to say, listen, game, set, match. Y'all can play politics all you want. If you don't close the border, we're done. But nobody would do that up here.
So frustrating. Senator, I wanted to make sure I ask you before I let you go about the DOD, the vaccine mandate. It's just madness to me that our troops are still going through all this crap. What did you learn about all this?
Well, being on Armed Services Committee, I've had all the stats, and we're starting to get them more and more in. Today, we had the Secretary of the Army here and the Chief of Staff of the Army, and I had already had the stats, and I kind of read them out to them. They ran out 1,800 people in the Army, just soldiers. And then we lost 200 great mechanics on airplanes and all the big equipment that we have. We run them off, 200, and we can't replace them. There's nobody to replace them with. And that's just the Army. That's not the Air Force and Marines. Because we were talking about recruiting, and that's what I've done all my life is recruit. We have nothing to sell these young men and women coming out of high school and college about a great and strong military. All we have to sell them is, hey, you join our military and you can be part of a great diversity, equity, and inclusion program. And, we'll go happily down the road. I mean, we need a killing machine. We are on the verge of 3 wars. Somebody needs to wake up and smell the roses. I've talked to active duty military all over the world since I've been in this job. I've talked to all over the country at our military bases. I've talked to military personnel that have recently got out. And a lot of people, Jesse, are getting out because they can't put up with all this madness that they're being taught in the military. They can't handle it. One Marine told me, he said, Coach, I fought in 2 wars. I love this country. I've got 2 boys that are getting close to military age. Not one of them will ever fight in this military. I will move to another country if we start a war because we can't win with the leadership that we have in the military that we have now. We have gone the other direction, and I think it's all by design. And so it's look at Joe Biden right now, show of weakness in the Middle East, a show of weakness everywhere all over the world, and what better than just say, hey, listen, we're just going to destroy our military and we won't be able to fight no matter whether people want us to fight or not. I mean, it's madness all over this administration and the things that we're doing in terms of protecting the American people and the best country that's ever been on the face of this earth.
I wonder, Mr. President, what you would say to him if he is considering using chemical or tactical nuclear weapons.
Don't. And I wonder, what is your message to Hezbollah and its backer, Iran? Don't.
Well, that didn't work out. Joining me now, my buddy Dave Raboy. He, of course, does Late Republic nonsense on Substack, which I enjoy all the time. Okay, Dave, first of all, let's deal with Iran. It's very common in this country to think of Iran like some backwater dump with a bunch of mud huts and whatnot. And while I'm not the biggest Iran fan in the world, that's not necessarily the case. They sure did have a lot of missiles and drones, Dave.
Well, they did. Iran is not a 3rd world country. It's a 2nd world country. No thanks to the mullahs. And Biden really, when he said no, don't, I think that was obviously BS because we've got reports that the Iranians cleared their actions, their acts of war against Israel with Biden. He gave them the thumbs up. He said, act within a particular constraint. So Biden and the administration greenlit essentially 300 launches of ballistic missiles, of cruise missiles, of drones at the Israeli population centers. And talk about an irresponsible thing to do, a ridiculous, unprecedented thing to do. Just do it sort of within these limits. We'll shoot down most of them. If we can't get them all, we can't get them all. Some Israelis will die, but go ahead, Iran, do your thing. I mean, it's ridiculous. And it's just another example of how this administration has been really the successor to the Obama administration when it comes to prioritizing Iran and when it comes to ditching our allies in favor of Iran.
Dave, can you help me understand something, at least as you understand it, between Obama and Biden? And this is just the way I saw it, and maybe I was wrong. I saw Obama, especially given his background, the Frank Marshall Davises of the world and whatnot, as just being someone who just hates Jews. That's how I took it. He's from that community, that black liberation theology community. He just doesn't like Jews. And I saw that would probably be the axe to grind he had with Israel. Joe Biden, he just seems more than anything else like he wants everything to shut up and go away because it's causing him problems domestically. He doesn't come off to me as some guy who hates Jews like Obama did. He comes off to me as a guy who doesn't like his poll numbers in Michigan.
Well, I mean, I think that's true to a great extent. With Obama, it was definitely some personal animus. But I think that analysis isn't entirely right, because sure, there's some personal animus when it comes to Barack Obama, the man. But he had an administration that was all pulling in the same direction, and they didn't necessarily share that type of animus. What they did have was an ideological animus against Israel. And they view Israel as white. They view Israel's enemies as brown or not white at the very least. And that's the far left frame through which they view international affairs, the same way that they view domestic affairs through that prism. So it's not surprising. In the Obama administration, I mean, as we both know, Joe Biden is basically out of it when it comes to the day to day and frankly even the hour to hour and minute to minute, knowing where he is at times. So this administration is jam packed with folks who love Iran, who hate Israel, and that's just what we're seeing. I mean, we have all kinds of reports of look. Their point man for Iran, the Biden administration point man for Iran, Robert Malley, mysteriously left because there was some kind of that when they did a background check and they didn't like what they found, but they didn't want to announce it and tell everyone that this guy Robert Malley, who's got long-standing relationships with the Iranians, long-standing relationships with Hamas and Hezbollah, et cetera. He just kind of disappeared, even though his people are still in the administration. So, and we know several folks who work either in the White House or in the State Department or in other capacities for Biden that are kind of hardcore pro-Iran, hardcore anti-Israel. So this is what we're seeing, and yes. It does have to do with winning in Michigan on one hand, but on the other hand, this is what these guys actually believe.
Dave, let's talk about Iran for a moment. Now, that was a whole lot of rockets and drones and missiles and other things which you just laid out for virtually no loss of life. And I know we're still sorting through the rubble as it is, an injury here, maybe a death there, but very small amount. And I can't help but wonder, did Iran actually want to hurt Israel at all? I mean, talk about a weak attempt at something. Is this just them trying to save face in front of somebody?
Well, I think there was definitely a face-saving aspect to this. On one hand, on the other hand, look. I mean, it could have been a disaster. These missiles could have gotten through. I mean, even if 10% of the missiles could have gotten through, that's a lot of loss of life. And you have to remember, you have to put these missiles into the same context as the Palestinian missiles and the Hezbollah missiles that rain down on Israel all the time. I mean, just because the death toll isn't huge, it doesn't make these less of a war crime, because these are, by definition, targeting civilians. I mean, there's no military use for this at all. A lot of apologists for the Iranian regime like to say, Israel bombed a site in Damascus next to the consulate, which they lie, and they say that it was an embassy. It wasn't an embassy, but it was an annex to the consulate where IRGC terrorists, military commanders that are legitimate military targets, were meeting in order to plan more attacks on Israel through Iran's terror proxies. And Israel whacked them. And then to respond, quote unquote, respond to this action by blanketing an entire country and putting the 7 million people in Israel under under fear for their lives that they're coming with 300 drones and cruise missiles and ballistic missiles, et cetera. I mean, it's no small thing, and it's definitionally a war crime. The purposeful targeting of civilians.
Dave, I understand the how nice it would be if you're a nation like Israel and have somebody park a carrier group right off your shore to protect you. But if you're Israel and you have to now go through this every time there's a Democrat elected, I mean, we got Joe Biden out there today reportedly telling them not to respond. If you're Israel, why bother continue this ally thing? Why bother with it? Who does it help? We're holding them back in significant ways. I understand we also help in significant ways. Not to be a hothead, but why bother continuing this? Why not just call America and say, hey, we're done with this. We're divorced.
Look, I mean, I think you make a great point. The U.S.-Israel relationship is complicated for a number of reasons. But I have long been a proponent of allowing Israel to make its own weapons, which is something that inside the Beltway and in the Pentagon is a big no-no. And everybody seems to think that we're just handing Israel bucket loads of money. But that money comes with significant strings attached, and that those strings are, you need to buy these weapons that you're buying from American manufacturers, which of course makes Lockheed and the military-industrial complex in this country very, very happy. On the other hand, too, policymakers in Congress and in the executive branch look around and they say, well, we would rather have, the Israelis are buying a lot of gear. So if they're buying a lot of gear, they may as well buy from the United States, because if they're buying from China, then that's not good for us strategically. So that's the situation that they're in. I've long advocated for them to be able to manufacture these weapons in Israel, but before we get to that, we're going to have this fight in the executive branch in the United States. Hopefully, we're going to win an election. Hopefully, Donald Trump is elected in November, and then we can start the mechanics of changing this. But I mean, look, don't you think that the Israelis would love to be able to make their own Iron Dome missiles, and to not have to come back every once in a while to the United States and say, "Hey, we need more stuff because we live in a dangerous neighborhood and we're in an active war zone, fighting against Iran's other, several proxies, from the Houthis to Shia militias in Syria and Hezbollah in Lebanon, and of course Hamas in Gaza. Not to mention what's going on, the disaster that's going on in the West Bank with the Palestinian Authority. So they have a need for a tremendous amount of ammunition, or else they're going to die. And it's in their best interest, and frankly, our best interest, for them to be building this stuff and building their weapons weapons manufacturing base in Israel, which is something that they would love to do. We just have to allow them to do it.
Let me ask you your story, because you're kind of a convert to this way of thinking over the last few years. Give us your story.
Yeah, I grew up pretty conservative in a small town in kind of blue collar Pennsylvania. Everybody knows it because of The Office. I grew up in Scranton. My grandfather was a coal miner, and my dad was kind of a star football player at Penn State and went into insurance. Very typical middle class, maybe upper middle class at that point. Like, we'd probably be considered poor at this point, and pretty much upper middle class, good public school education. And there was definitely a focus to achieve and to do well. And I played varsity tennis. I was a dancer, went on to a very conservative school in the South in Virginia. But I think part of me was kind of on this active pursuit of fulfillment. Like, I was seeking something and I wasn't finding it in the outside world, but I kept going there for it. And I rebelled a little bit. If the things that my parents were telling me were true, I think I wanted to find those things out for myself. I didn't want to just take anybody's word for it. And so I felt very constrained kind of by this potentially, I guess we want to say conservative. It felt very binding, right? We talk about boundaries, but this to me at that time felt very binding. And do this, I was ready to go to law school. That's what I thought I wanted to do. My actual undergrad is in public policy. I worked in DC for a summer and I said, no, thank you. And then I moved to Alabama, which is also pretty conservative. I moved to Birmingham, and then I, was still seeking, and I went where everybody goes when they're seeking, which is Los Angeles. And I, if you don't have a solid sense of self, if you don't have a true understanding of who you are and what you want, you can get very lost there very easily and very pulled into the progressive ideology. And that's what happened. Like I was perfect fodder for the left, right? Someone who was seeking, who probably wanted attention. And I talk about this in my piece in the Federalist. I think we have a lot of women walking around with daddy issues. I think women want to be adored. They want to be loved. They have this nurturing quality. They have this empathetic quality that can be taken advantage of by the left. So all of those things really put me in prime position to be brainwashed for the most part. And then I was out there and in other liberal cities, New York and Austin, for about 20 years. I mean, way fast forwarding to COVID. And I made a career out of kind of health and wellness. I was an on-camera personality. I got all these degrees. I was deep into the yoga world, deep into spirituality, trips to India, following a guru. I mean, it was a cult for sure. The more I even learn about what was going on behind the scenes, the more confident I am in saying that I was in a spiritual cult. And I kind of started coming out of that right before COVID. And then COVID hit. And something just did not feel right. Like for all I knew about health and nutrition, and particularly when we started to see the data and who was dying, it just didn't feel right to me. The red flag really went off when people started rushing to the store for toilet paper. And I'm like, what? This is just illogical. What the heck is going on? And you're telling me, at the time I lived in Topanga Canyon, which is just this beautiful enclave in Los Angeles near Malibu in the mountains. And you're telling me I can't go to the beach? I mean, you saw, I'm sure, there were surfers that got pulled out of the water and arrested. And I saw people jumping to the other side of the street with masks on. And that just like red flags went off. I think all the training I had, what I say is my conservative upbringing probably saved me, right? So logic finally started to kick in again. And then I really went down the rabbit hole. There was another incident that happened around the George Floyd stuff. And, it's a kind of a longer story, but it made me see the hypocrisy of the left, really. And it around the whole Black Lives Matter thing and where people were getting their information and how biased they were about it. And Candace Owens has a part in that story, so that was interesting. And I had no idea who she was when I first heard her. But so I we were in lockdowns and I took a lot of hikes around my neighborhood because that's pretty much all I can do. And I was listening to Joe Rogan podcast and Jordan Peterson podcasts. And then I just started to kind of wake up like a lot of people, I think. I think COVID in a way was somewhat of a blessing for people. For a lot of parents, they saw what was happening in schools. For some people kind of living in this la-la land of rainbows and unicorns out in Los Angeles, that everything is not rainbows and unicorns. And then I kind of decided, I'm really interested in truth. I think I always have been. I think that's ultimately what led me to seek things. And what I was doing in my career prior didn't feel meaningful enough anymore. And I know I've helped a lot of people. I've had a lot of people reach out to me and compliment me on my work, and I've helped them, and that was great. But I think I had reached the point in my career where I'd done everything I was going to do, and there was something going on here that was bigger. And I decided to go back to get my master's in public policy at Pepperdine University, which was right up the street from me, which was very convenient. And that program, what we had to read, the great books we had to read, right? It was like a great books program. So Aristotle, a book by Matthew Crawford was really wonderful. And I kind of gobbled his stuff up. And reading and listening and having conversations with people. And then I came to realize, like, wow, this side of the aisle is a lot more fun, first of all. And I'm back in reality and I can laugh again. And not everything has to be so serious and I don't have to save the world. And along with that, I went back to Christianity. So it was like all of these things, like that weight, that burden that Jesus took off my shoulders of needing to be the savior of the world, because someone already did that. I mean, it was just a massive transformation. And what I want to emphasize about that is that, like, I think right now, this goes beyond what we're seeing now, goes beyond kind of Marxist ideology. It goes beyond the woke mind virus. I think there's a deep spiritual sickness, and that's in the heart. And no amount of logic, this is where I think conservatives sometimes miss the boat. There's no amount of logic that's going to appeal somebody that is to change their mind that is spiritually sick. You can have these wake-up calls. I think COVID was one of them, but I just think we are ill right now, and it's a deep illness, and it's beyond, like I said, this mind virus, although that plays a part of it.
Yeah.